To be a CEO performer at any level in today's modern work world, tune into all the podcast episodes of Cinderella CEO on Air. Cinderella success stories, CEO interviews, mentoring techniques, and more.
Hi, everyone. It's great to see everybody out there. My two guests, Brenda Scott and Richard D'Ambrosio, I'm going to introduce them officially in just a moment. And I'm Cary Broussard. I am the host of Cinderella CEO on Air. Some of you have been listeners for a long time. We've actually done this podcast for almost 5 years, believe it or not. So we're really proud of the work we've done with Cinderella CEO on Air because we bring transformational leaders to the forefront. And our purpose is to motivate our listeners to really learn from our guests and apply it to their own lives and their own careers so that they can have a career comeback if they need it, really take advantage of the lessons that you learn while listening or watching this podcast. Our podcast is recorded on Zoom. It's approximately 45 minutes, and we market on all the podcast platforms. And today we're recording for YouTube. So you may be watching us on YouTube today. I hope you are. We are doing a little experiment today, which I like. I think it works really well. We actually have audience members that are part of the participation who will send me any questions that they have through the chat. But I'll be pretty much the one asking the questions, although I know my panelists pretty well. They're going to have some questions too that might pop up. I have a script for this podcast, but I'm not going to follow it 100%. It is really an outline because we like to have this be more of a give and take and kind of riff off each other, if you will. And so as host of Cinderella CEO on Air, I'm also the author of a book called From Cinderella to CEO, and I can't wait for you to meet our guests. We are navigating times in society right now on the local and global level, where we each have opportunities to explore the topic of cultural intelligence. Everybody listening to this podcast, I don't care who you are right now, where you're walking around in Dallas, Texas, or you're in another country, you're in another part of the United States, we are all faced with the opportunity to really learn more and understand what cultural intelligence is all about and to have more of it. I've invited two guests today, as I mentioned, Brenda Scott and Richard D'Ambrosio, because they're both building and strengthening relationships across generations, across genders, sports, and cultures. And they're helping people connect and thrive in their daily pursuits, whether it's at college, on the college campus, communities, and in business. And at Cinderella CEO on Air, it is, and at Cinderella CEO Seed to CEO Institute, it's our mission to connect you to people with transformational stories. And I call them modern day fairy tales, if you will. So, with that said, I'd like to get started. And how about my guests, Brenda and Richard? You ready?
We're ready.
Yeah, let's get
Ready. All
going.
right. Richard, I'm going to start with you. You are a natural storyteller, and you've honed your skills as a storyteller, first as a dad, reading your children's stories, and you write stories along with your kids, I think. But you're the family breadwinner because of being a single dad right now, but you've made your way through the corporate world, American Express. You're a travel executive, and we're delighted to have you coming today from Connecticut. And you have so much more to, and I want to talk a little bit more. But before I go further, I want to do a quick game of how I met you. How did we meet, Richard?
You were a vice president at Wyndham.
And I was head of public affairs for the American Express small business card, the lending division and charge card division of American Express. And one of the things that we were unfortunately aware of was that American Express had a brand that did not speak to a very large group of cultures in the United States, females and minorities. And you, like minded at Wyndham, were trying to expand into outside of sort of traditional markets in terms of demographics. And it was a natural for us to work on a couple of projects together because Wyndham also was a partner in the American Express small business card. And that would have been 1997, maybe?
Yeah, you didn't have to say that. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding you. But, that was, in a way, this feels like that same time, where we're getting, back on track. Okay, let's look at the emerging markets. Let's look at our opportunities. Where are the issues? I have a longer bio for you, but I want to also mention that you're currently the author and founder of the Storytelling That Sells. It's a course and it's also a book. You're a communications consultant, a speaker, a speechwriter, and you got a fantastic Substack column. It's called Mindful Masculinity. And all your work that you've done, as you mentioned, with American Express, Virgin Atlantic Airways, and KPMG, you have consulted with hundreds of entrepreneurs and startups, and most recently working with an agency, Marshall and Sterling, the 36th largest independent insurance brokerage in the U.S. So you really have a breadth of experience, and yet your core has always been about really being present and being there for people who have a voice. And when we as business leaders listen to those voices, we become very successful by looking at that market, those emerging markets, and responding to those markets. So that's what I wanted to mention too about having met you and really understanding our connection through the marketing and why it's so important. Which
It
brings,
is.
what am I missing? What else did I miss when I'm talking about?
Yeah, I don't think you missed anything, but I wanted to build on something that you said, which is America is probably the most diverse country in the world. We are the least homogeneous country. And as a result, there are so many subcultures in this country that have a very distinct voice. And one of the things that I love doing what I've done in marketing and public relations and storytelling consulting is trying to build platforms so that everybody can hear the richness of all these different voices. Because, other than being a democratic republic, our diversity is our strength. And in the context of today's discussion, having the intelligence as individuals to want to be intellectually curious, to want to hear the stories of others so that we can continue this history of growing a stronger, community of 350 million people. That's kind of the lifeblood of what I'm doing and including with mindful masculinity, to have men listen to the voice that they've been listening to and sometimes taking part in and asking themselves, is that allowing other voices to be heard? And how do I flourish and suffer when I don't allow other voices to speak their voice and tell their stories?
I love that, and you're doing such a good job with that. And it brings me to introducing, and thank you for setting it up. To introduce you well, you've already met Brenda Scott, but introduce our audience to Brenda Scott, who is currently the Director of Cultural Intelligence at SMU. Brenda, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate this, Cary.
Thank you. And again, I'm playing this game, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about your background, but how could you talk about how we met?
Absolutely. Through a wonderful organization who collaborates with us at SMU, Project Unity, the Collab Lab. Charlene Edwards, Pastor Richie Butler, has a tremendous program called Project Unity, who I have the privilege to partner with and collaborate with throughout SMU campus, but centered in, in athletics. And it's been amazing. And then it's about bringing people together. And Collab Lab was something that like-minded individuals come on and tell their stories, tell their journeys. It's our support system, right, of giving each other tips of how to navigate and move around within that space of work.
It's awesome and such alignment that Project Unity has with SMU and your organization. You work with 500 student athletes, almost 500 student athletes.
Almost 484 to be exact, but yes.
Wow. And you work with faculty and the parents at SMU to build teams and relationships across cultures. It just goes without saying. You're also a mom and you've written a children's book, All I Need Is My Tablet. Is that right?
I did back in 2018, and I have a huge family, which we'll get into, like where I'm from and all that, but I have a huge family, a lot of nephews and nieces. I love you all. Shout out to you guys. And my nephews and my nieces on these games, and my son, they're like little robots. Once they get on the tablet, the world doesn't matter. So the book is really allowing the kids to understand that a tablet cannot replace relationships. And I think it coincides with the work that I do. Relationships are essential, and how we treat each other, it matters a lot.
Wow. And if we wanted to get that book, can we order it through you
Yep.
or?
Yep,
Okay.
you can go on Amazon to get the book.
That's so cool. Congratulations on that. And
Thank you.
again, Richard, your book too. And in 2018, Brenda, you also created B. Scott Visions. And through your life experiences, your passion for youth development and leading with purpose, you were on a mission to help people reach their full potential. And I'd love to hear more about that and your story. What's your Cinderella CEO story?
Wow. So B Scott Visions, it just really came from everything that I have been through and just the career background. And again, like you saying, just helping people reach their full potential, but I started off with just doing it through sports. So originally, everyone, I'm from Youngstown, Ohio. My parents, Lula and Wesley Scott Jr., have given me all the confidence in the world to be who I am today. Daughter of a Marine, my father, proud Marine, he passed away in 22. The youngest of all my siblings. Again, like I told you guys, I have a huge family, but I am a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a mom, a sister, an auntie, a niece. I'm a first-gen student. I'm a former student athlete, also a coach. But most importantly, I'm a child of God. And just bringing all those things together, I thought I was going to go into law, Cary. I thought I was going into law. I was going to law school. Since I was a little kid, I've been saying I wanted to be like, the Huxtables with Claire, and just growing up in Matlock. Matlock was my guy. And I'm like, I want to do that. But when I got into it, I found out that I did not want to do that, and turned over to business. But I was a student athlete, so I played basketball collegiately. And with that turned into a passion for going into youth development. So I had a couple of mentors who put me in situations that I was leading young people. And through leading young people, I found that I was really good at it. And I was good at helping those who struggled the most find their true selves, and they succeeded. So you can put a bad person in a good environment, you can change that person's character. And I think it's all about the environment. So bringing that story to life and doing it in ways that relates to people, not talking over their heads, not having programs that they're not interested in, but having it be the carrot that they come to, and then make it so impactful that they can't resist it. So education and nonprofit world, I came from great organizations such as City Year, KIP, United Way has got it the way, but sports and education has always been a passion. And at SMU, I'm able to marry the two of the education piece when it comes to the cultural intelligence, and then the sports with getting back to working with student athletes and coaches and administrators. I truly love it. Have always had the privilege to teach K through 12 setting, to coach, to help others, and now it's just all coming together, and it's very, very rewarding.
So rewarding, and so rewarding to have you here. This to just segue into what you're describing uh, about your life. You've understood and adapted to different cultures, Brenda, as well as Richard. The definition of cultural intelligence. There's a couple of different ways of kind of describing it. Understand your own cultural background, make an effort to learn about other cultures, try to become aware of your own cultural biases and assumptions. And one thing I'll just read real quickly here that I have is that cultural intelligence is a critical part of setting yourself apart in today's globalized world of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and innovation. So I think it is a point of difference to help you in navigating the world, but also helping you stand out. It's the ability to relate and work effectively with people from different cultural backgrounds. And it goes beyond the existing notions of cultural sensitivity and awareness. With cultural intelligence, we learn how to strategically use cultural differences to come up with more innovation. So I think that's probably going to be the theme for the rest of our conversation is innovation, right? Because we all know that that's what attracts us to this subject matter. So Brenda, Richard, first of all, did you want to add anything before we get started into the power of teams?
Nope. Love the setup.
Okay. So, Brenda, you
Yeah.
work with teams, you work with athletes. How can we learn from what you do on the field, on the court, and elsewhere to bring people together as solid, performance-driven teams? We're all pretty high achievers here, right? And probably listening. How do you do what you do and bring people along that are different? They're all different and they all have to work together.
All different. Again, just using just athletic and using that thing, right? So my role is so unique and it's so fitting, for the athletic setting, but it's used everywhere. So we have coaches, staff, and student athletes from all over the world, but sports, it brings everyone together just in general. So just think of now your favorite team, you at a stadium or you at an arena, someone scores, you're high-fiving people you don't know, you're hugging people because you won the championship. And sometimes, you're even crying with those people if your team loses. And that's what sports bring. It just brings a unified front. And we all have a common goal when it comes to sporting teams is that we want to see our team win and succeed. So we have to translate it over to life. We want to win in life. How are we going to help individuals in different populations win in life? And that's what I do is building those relationships so we can find out what each particular population needs at what given time so they can be successful.
Nice, nice. What about you have almost like a questionnaire you give to your incoming students to give you background on them?
Well, so with the questionnaire, that's typically when I'm managing and supervising individuals. The questionnaire I just feed off with my student athletes, but it's really trying to figure out who they are. So I want to know your interests. I want to know what you like, what you don't like. I want to know your birthday. Celebrate the small successes. Those are tips into building trust. Because I believe you can't have effective leadership and be able to truly guide someone if they don't trust you. So trust is huge. It is very important. Even going back to the power of teams, as I am a huge supporter and a huge student of Simon Sinek. Love him. You do not know who he is, please look him up. He wrote the books, Leaders Eat Last, Find Your Why, Start With Your Why, and The Infinite Game. Read all the books. He is absolutely right when it comes. He talks about trust a lot, and he is absolutely right when he talks about trust, is that it's it's an action word. And my mom always say, love is an action word. You have to show it. You have to show that you love someone. You have to show the ability to trust. So trust is activated as a result when you actively make someone feel safe. If someone does not feel safe, they're not going to trust you. And I'm sure people have had supervisors who may always looking for you to mess up, or always looking for you for that mistake that you make. That's how that's going to make you feel. Would you feel safe with that? Or if you have a coach who's always sending the assistant or trainer to check up on you, and the assistants and the trainers have a stronger relationship than the coach, then when the coach starts talking, it's the trust isn't there. So it's so important to make people feel safe, build the relationships, and then the trust will naturally follow. Whether you're a leader, coach, or parent, you have to create that environment for the trust to happen.
Wow. Richard, tell us what.
I was going to say, I love how Brenda tied two important points together, which is that a leader needs to create an environment of trust, and how they do that is individual to a lot of different people. But if they can create that environment of trust, then someone has the ability to pursue their why. They have the ability to bring their authentic self to the team and say, this is what I'm really good at. This is what motivates me.
Yes.
And because I trust that the leader has set up an environment that I can show that person to all of you, and that person, you will allow me to contribute in the way that I'm most capable of doing, because I'm pursuing my why.
Yeah.
That is so critical. And we've seen it on so many sports teams. And while I'm listening to you, Brenda, I'm thinking back to the 1980 U.S. hockey team in the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that Herb Brooks did from the beginning was try to break down the mistrust that the players had, because they came from two different cultures.
Yeah.
There was the Northeast New England hockey culture, and then there was that Midwest Minnesota culture, and they hated each other. And Herb had to immediately break down the distrust, because he knew this is not the most talented team that's going to the Olympics, but they will be able to allow each person to flourish to their fullest if they can trust each other.
Trust each other. So it's so important. It's so essential.
And it's almost accepted that we understand and believe in those tactics for athletics and teams, but we haven't translated it to as well as we need to the business world, to the corporate world. And so how, I mean, I said this wasn't going to be totally scripted. How do we do that? How do we take what we know to work in athletics and in team branding and make sure that leaders understand and can become the greatest leaders in the world, really, if they are able to help their team members be themselves, bring their full selves to work, achieve their why, as you said.
Yeah, I think it starts with you as the leader, right? You need to be vulnerable. You need to show yourself to your team, because if you're asking me to be vulnerable and I know nothing about you, who you are, what you stand for, your values, it's going to be really, really hard for us to have an open relationship, and for me to be as authentic as I want to be if my leader is not being that way with me. So starting with you, of being vulnerable, having empathy, showing empathy, and the curiosity of wanting to know who your team members are. It has to be so intentional. As a coach, when I coach, I knew exactly who every player on my team, I knew who they were outside of the game of basketball. I knew who they were on the court, on the floor. I knew who they were off. It's the same with work. Sometimes you don't want to bring your mixed personal and business. If you want people to really thrive for you, and first of all, they got to like you. Second of all, the vulnerability is there. The empathy needs to be there, because I need to trust that if something's going on in my home, that I can come and talk to you and not feel ashamed, not feel bad, or feel like threatened. Richard, you talked about a story of of disconnecting from the office, right? Of some managers feel if you don't check in, they're holding something against you, subconsciously, right? I just think that it really starts with the leaders being intentional, but also when people are put in leadership positions, we don't give them any real training, but sending them to like a conference or something like that. I think we have to do better job with helping them through the grind, whether it's quarterly or yearly, of giving them tips and, trainings on being that effective leader and showing them how to lead instead of assuming that they know how to lead.
Yeah.
Even as simple as walking around the office. I know we've been remote, a lot of us, with the workplace, but that goes so far in just being present, whether you're walking around the Zoom and meeting people, or present. And you bring up, I'm so glad you brought up the Bentley. You didn't realize you were bringing up the name of the actual survey, but the Bentley Gallup Business and Society study that Richard has talked to us about, that American workers continue to place high premiums on workplace culture. They place high premiums on sustainability, improving communities and the lives of others, promoting inclusivity. They care about climate, all the things that we haven't stopped caring about, not to mention our own well-being. And Richard, you've been writing about some of these studies.
Well, so I write this Substack, Mindful Masculinity, and so I've been dating this woman, and we've been having this ongoing discussion for about 4 years now about, how do men present themselves in the workplace, in relationships, and for some reason, I guess, the algorithms of Google and all the platforms that I work on, I get these research papers get thrown in my face. And this particular one that you're quoting looked at culture, but interestingly, it also had a look at the difference between male leaders and female leaders. And in relation to what you just said, Cary, on certain critical things like offering mental health services to employees, work-life balance, inclusivity, creating a sustainable environment outside of the office. What was fascinating to me in that study was that, on average, female employees rated the importance of these factors that I think all of us would want to vote for in a company and maybe want to put some of our profits towards. They put them at 10 to 20 percentage points higher than their male counterparts. And what I'm concerned about in trying to talk about men and masculinity in this environment is to have men be introspective, to look at data and ask themselves, where do I see myself on that continuum? Am I more likely as a corporate decision maker to lean in on something like equity and inclusion, making sure that everybody has mental health services who's employed in our business? Because if I'm not, then I need to ask myself, who is the true me that I'm bringing to the office? And how then am I potentially impacting the true them, my colleagues here? And I'm really, fixated on this concept of trying to get men to go through that introspective process, because I do believe the way that men are raised, and I don't want to cause any divisiveness, but I think the way that white males have been raised in the United States is that we tend to lean in a direction of it's about my success. It's about my financial success and my financial gain. And this other stuff is something I may not prioritize. And I'm really concerned about that in today's environment, because I know, thinking about people, and I'll give you a very quick story because I don't want to occupy all the time, but I think it's an important story. So I was working at an organization and we were launching Pride Month. And I was searching around as the chief communicator to get a senior executive to be that person who launched Pride Month to all the employees. And nobody took me up on it. And so I wrote a very personal story about something that happened in my life, that someone came out to me in such a subtle manner that I asked them, like a year later, I said, it was really strange when you came out formally to me, you did it in such a nonchalant way. And why is that? And this person said, because I didn't think it mattered to you. I didn't think I had to shout that to you as I was talking about this other topic. And so when, I put that into this email that launched Pride Month, and I kid you not, the overwhelming email response that I received from straight colleagues, transgender colleagues, gay colleagues, the overwhelming support to say to me, thank you so much. And the most heartwarming part of it was there was a transgender individual at our company. And this person wrote to me and said, I moved from the South to the North because I was literally afraid for my health and welfare. The environment where I lived was the animosity to people like me was growing, and I was concerned. But I've never felt more seen and welcome in this company than that email that you sent out today. And I think that's what leaders need to realize, especially people who are part of a large sort of homogeneous class that tends to dominate conversations like I'm doing now, is we need to be introspective about what are we doing to talented people who don't feel like they can bring their true self, their authentic self to the office because they're not sure how they're going to be treated. We've got to think about these things.
Yeah, you bring up something so critical to the workplace. And if Brenda is coaching a team, has a team in college athletics, and somebody doesn't show up or can't play their part, in the whatever field you're playing or court, it's really noticeable. And the statistics show those companies who are most innovative have typically a very diverse workforce. So it'll be interesting as we study this going forward, what this looks like.
Diversity is good for the bottom line.
Is good for the
It's good for the bottom line. How about if we just leave it there? You want to make more money? Then start being inclusive.
And that is truly the success formula that Richard and I both have implemented in our work, is to understand that from a financial standpoint and a corporate bottom line, is that diversity and inclusion is
makes money.
It's and Brenda, you have a story of, and I'm jumping around, so you can get mad at me later, but you have a story about taking kids into a situation, you call it pictures are worth 1,000 words, I think, that people look at different lenses. We all have biases. Everybody, those of us on this podcast listening or in it, we all have biases, but you have an exercise that you take kids through.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so I have a session I created called Pictures Worth 1,000 Words. And in this session, I show random pictures and then allow allows the group to first interpret it, what they're seeing on an individual level. And then we'll discuss it as a group. But depending on how you see the world, you're going to give me different responses because your perspective is different. That's just like life. Depending on our backgrounds, our situation, we're going to look through we have a different lens that we're looking through, and we're going to give a different opinion. We're going to have different, values and things that comes out of that. But years back when I was in Youngstown, I created a program called Walk in My Shoes. And I had about 25 inner city kids from the current high school I was working at. And we went to one of the higher performing suburban schools in the area. So what we did was partner with their principal. Everyone agreed to it. Those 25 students matched up based on their their subjects, their grade level, whether they're in honors classes, AP, played a sport, we paired them up together and they followed that particular student from bell to bell. So the buses got there at 7:30 a.m. They went from bell to bell. So I get both of these groups in, inner city students on one side, the suburban kids on the other side. And I asked them, safe space. I need for you guys to be truthful and honest. I talked to my inner city kids. I said, when we first walked into this building, what was your thought process? What was you thinking? Wow, these kids are bougie, they're rich, they just have it all together, right? So suburban kids asking the same question. What did you guys think about the inner city kids when you found out that this was happening? Well, so you're not going to offend anyone. Don't worry. So they were kind of like, oh, I said, just tell the truth. We're here. We're all being vulnerable, ghetto, loud, uneducated. Those were the things that came out of our suburban kids' mouths. But at the end, when we started talking about, y'all had a whole day together. You start, from bell to bell, you build some type of relationship. And what did you find out about each other? So I had one inner city students that was paired up, and they both talked about abandonment. So the inner city kid was like, well, my father's been locked up, and I feel that my father has abandoned me because of that, and it had hurt me, moving along. And the suburban kid was like, I feel the same way. So both my parents are with me, but my father, he works so much. He's gone about 6 months out the year. He doesn't attend my games. He doesn't show up for things that's important to me. I feel abandonment too. Same thing, right? Two different perspectives. If we say, what does abandonment looks like? That's a picture. That's a visual of a real life story of a picture worth 1,000 words, because you have two different students from two completely different worlds giving you the same example of how they both feel abandoned by their fathers. And one have their father present, the other one not.
It's to me, it's so powerful because it connects also to what Richard's talking about with the masculinity and men not feeling, thinking that, well, their only purpose, and this is for women and men, but people in the corporate world, business world, whatever profession you're in, if you think that you can't go on vacation because you need to stay at the office and put in all your time and show that you are the best of the best, which of course, again, we're all achievers. We've all maybe experienced that. But I think, Richard, you brought up maybe it was another study that those who had experienced, they had actually taken time off for vacation. And they and the study showed that those who did take time off for vacation were kind of dinged by their manager or the leader of the department to say, I rated them less committed to the job. But really what happens down the road is the kids suffer because you weren't there with them versus your boss dinging you. Comment on that if you would, please.
So you're referring to a study by Korn Ferry. They're the big sort of, they're an executive search firm, an employee search firm, but they also study leadership. They study employee engagement. And they quoted a study. I don't know if it was something they did or if it was something that the University of Southern California did, but they basically asked people managers, okay, this one employee leaves an automatic reply that says, look, I'm on vacation. I will be replying to you when I get back. And then employees who stayed in touch while they were away on vacation. And sure enough, the managers were more likely to promote and see in a better light the people who were always on. And it's interesting to me that this is a very American thing. I've traveled a lot around the world, and I know that European countries have certainly gotten more like American countries or American workplaces. But it's such an American thing that I'm always worried what's happening at work. I can't let go completely. And again, when we're talking about bringing your authentic self to the workplace, how are you going to do that if, when the time that you earn to be away from the office, you're worried about going and being that authentic person, reconnecting with that person and all the people that help that person flourish? How are you going to go find that person to bring them back if you're never able to be them? And I think um, when we think about cultural intelligence, there's another common ground, as Brenda just pointed out, which is all of us need a break. All of us. And if someone's a type A personality and they're a people leader, and perhaps that's part of the reason why they've been promoted to leadership, they still have to be able to acknowledge that not everybody's like them, and that some people will be better at work, more productive at work, if we let them go on vacation
Yeah.
and we plan around their being away so that they don't have to check their email constantly. It would be really helpful in a cultural intelligence perspective if we included that in the conversation.
Yeah, I love that.
Absolutely.
Brenda, do
Absolutely.
you want to say, add anything to that? Because my mind is just going in a bunch of different directions on how that could be helpful. And I want to go on vacation, by the way.
No, I think Richard is so correct. If we're sharing tips on, leadership and how we can improve and help our teams and those that we're in charge, we're taking charge of, is, being intentional, like being so intentional about things, creating those weekly and bi-weekly or monthly meetings. And it's not about work. It's not about work. It's really about what's going on with you. What do you need from me? That is a great question that a supervisor should ask all the time of their people. What do you need from me so you can be successful? How can I guide you? How can I help you? Sometimes, you can't see the forest for the trees. You need to get down to ask the people, what are their true needs are. Like with the student athletes, like we ask them, if we're doing programming, we want it to be successful. We want high attendance. We want to know, what do you want? Because we found out creating things that student athletes do not sign off on, it's not a good idea, because it's usually not what they want. So we really need to be intentional with truly finding out what people needs are, and having that, what I call the platinum rule, is treating people the way they want to be treated. I know the golden rule: treat people how you want to be treated, but you treat people how they want to be treated so you can get the most out of them.
And being culturally intelligent is just that, meaning like being the same gender, same race, same religion, but they're different. Every individual is different. So find out, explore your own opportunities, maybe practice a little bit of this ourselves as culturally intelligent people, because we're not all perfect at it.
No.
I'm curious to ask both you and Brenda, Cary. You guys have worked with lots of leaders. What do you think is one of the most important, if not the primary, quality that's important to someone being open to cultural intelligence? What have you discovered? These types of leaders who have this quality seem to get this and activate it in some fashion. Any insights there on how to help leaders look for that one big thing?
Brenda, you want to go first?
Empathy. Empathy would be the biggest one for me. Having, being able to, trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes to understand their situation, that's going to help guide your decision making based on the empathy. Like, you don't always have to show up big, bad, and tough because you have the title. Sometimes that the title gets lost in translation when it comes to being a true leader, I believe, because some people hide behind the title and they're really not a great leader, but they have the title, right? So you have to follow suit. But if more empathy is shown in the curiosity, because you need to ask questions. There's a reason behind certain behaviors. There's a reason behind everything. You may notice someone's productivity has dropped, but instead of just going to sort of reprimand them, how about pulling to the side and finding out why? Because something happened somewhere. Because you was here at one point and now I see you here. But instead of trying to write them off, how about figuring out what happened so you can help them out? So I would say empathy and curiosity, Richard.
Very, very nice. I love that our roles have switched, and that I can follow Brenda, because I'm an overachiever. I think it's a great question, and I would say the great leaders I've worked with, they have been approachable, and they don't necessarily make assumptions about me or other people. They ask questions, like Brenda said, and then they share who they are, their vulnerability,
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
and they compliment. I think this is one of the biggest
Mm,
things right there.
mm.
Like if you compliment me and I am a, up and comer, oh my God, I will remember that for the rest of my life, you know.
Oh
And
yeah.
I did have somebody actually do that, a general manager of a hotel. Um, I'm walking through the hallway and I asked him something and he said, Cary, you could do anything and be anything you want to be. And I was like, what? Nobody had ever said that to me. And I still remember, I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was, but that one thing looking at me and that was a time
Yeah,
when women were not told that, at least in my world. So great question.
absolutely. Richard, let's flip it back on you. How
Yeah.
about you?
So, I mean, I'm a one-trick pony. Mindful meditation has been to me the savior of the last 20 plus years of my life. When I was going through a very difficult time during my marriage, and I was trying to navigate that, I stumbled upon John Kabat-Zinn, and he demystified meditation for me and brought me to this concept of how to be mindful, how to try to slow the world down. And I think this relates directly to both of what you just said, to slow the world down and say, what am I experiencing right now? And before I overreact, let me understand, what might this person be going through? Is there empathy for me to find? Because I'm not just being triggered and reacting to this person. I'm thinking about, you know, our relationship holistically, what they do holistically. And I'm more capable of being intellectually curious, empathetic, to ask intelligent questions so I can draw them out. To me, it's mindfulness. And I find that the best leaders are truly working on slowing the world down, trying to understand the greater truth of what's happening in a moment and not getting triggered by assumptions, unconscious or conscious biases. They're just really present in the moment.
Wow. I think, we're coming towards the end of this, but at the same time, I'm not ending this because this conversation is going so well. Um, I want to make sure that I get a little blurb in here about what we do at Broussard Global and Seat to CEO. We cultivate at Broussard Global a brand's energy, kind of what Richard's been talking about, and Brenda. They both have such great energy. We work on that with different companies and different brands, and our Seed to CEO Institute helps organizations build and manage inclusive and innovative productive teams. That's one of the reasons we wanted to do the podcast today, because we want to bring people to you who may or may not have access to you. And we know that you do follow us through the Cinderella CEO on Air podcast, and it's a great community. It's a long time community. You can also reach out to me if you like at cinderellaceo.com/, Call with Cary. It actually is a URL, cinderellaceo.com, and you'll see on the website you can set up a call with me if you'd like. And I just want to bring that up because this is, and Faye Hall Jackson, who came on earlier with us, we have conducted masterminds with great minds, like Brenda and Richard, and I invite both of them to, and they will stay involved with the C2CEO Institute. I know they will because I will force them to. No, I will strong arm them. But we really do have a great tribe of people, a community of people, and I think more than ever, it's so important for us to, yes, meet in person whenever we can, but definitely see each other face to face. And these conversations need to be more frequent because we're going through massive, maybe unexpected change that I don't know. It's almost like the pandemic, but thankfully that isn't existing now as a, we don't have to get vaccinated, but we have to stay connected.
Yeah.
And we have to, we have to be vulnerable. We can't assume that somebody thinks a certain way when they may think the exact opposite. Those assumptions, we don't know what people had to go through in order to show up to be with us. And so we need to ask questions. We need to provide safety nets for people. We need to be, and I think Brenda, you started the conversation off this way, is it starts with us.
Yeah.
And maybe coming full circle, here we are. I hope we're starting a conversation that will continue. I'd like to invite you all back again.
Yes, please.
To do this again. We will again do the mastermind groups. I want to keep you involved in that. I also want the audience to know how they can stay in touch with each of you. If you wouldn't mind, maybe Richard, you want to go first?
So if you go to richarddambrosio.substack.com, you'll come to Mindful Masculinity. I think I'm up to something like almost 80 posts at this point, but I'm really trying to keep a sustained discussion and hopefully a welcoming discussion. I don't want to turn men off to the concept of challenging the way that they present themselves, but to have a welcoming discussion where men can look at things like surveys and research that objectively say, this is kind of how we behave, or some of us behave, and where do you fit in on that spectrum? And really focus our dialogue on, the Buddhist side of me, to promote flourishing and to minimize suffering. That ultimately should be all of our goal in life, both for ourselves and for the people we encounter.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Richard. Brenda.
Yeah, you can email me at bscottvisions@gmail.com, and that's all one word, bscottvisions with an S, at gmail.com. Or you can also utilize my SMU email, which is brendas@smu.edu.
Go Ponies.
Go Ponies, pony up.
My only disappointment, Brenda, is we didn't get to tie in hotels and Simon Sinek and the story of Noah in Las
Noah.
Vegas.
Yeah,
Noah, the barista.
the barista. Yeah.
We're going to have to come back and tell the Noah story.
Okay, we're going to just keep people waiting with bated breath about that. And I do say, I do have to mention this now, Richard. Coming from the hotel industry, travel industry, we want people to go on vacation. It's travel.
Yeah.
That keeps everybody happy in the hospitality industry when you
Yes,
travel.
it does.
I want to thank you both from the bottom of my heart for what you bring to society, and to me and to all of our listeners. You've given your valuable time today. Cinderella CEO on air. All of us here appreciate you and hope that everybody listening today will stay in touch with us and stay part of our community. And we will see you or hear you soon. Thank you very much.
Take care.
See you soon.